We're muted.
Hello.
All right. I'll try and set that over there so I don't.
Oh, you think I'm going to get that right?
Right. You're in charge.
Uh-oh.
Oh, hello, hello, hello.
Justina, this is not my department. I don't know.
I put you on the wrong.
You're
You want to come and sew instead?
I wanted you to do it all. I don't know. I'm not sure how you misunderstood that.
Oh my goodness. I have quite the selection of tools over here. You just.
Oh, wow. Your mouse moves so fast compared to mine. There we go.
There we go.
Hello. Miss Cheryl, Miss Mindy.
All right.
Miss
Hopefully
Kathy.
you guys can hear us okay. And we have our mics on the opposite sides because we're on the opposite.
Yes, that was very awkward.
Yeah.
I don't.
We're on the wrong side.
But our names are right.
Our names are right. I did manage
You
to
did get
do
that.
that.
Hi, Mom.
Okay, yes. So we wanted to talk about seams.
Yeah.
Getting the
seam you want.
The seam you want.
More specifically,
yes.
the 1/4 inch.
The 1/4 inch.
This works for all things.
Yes.
But specifically the strips and the things that we're going to talk about are going to be specific to the 1/4 inch.
Right.
But
you can apply
this technique to
anything.
Any others
as
well.
And if you guys have a special question, leave a comment. We'll do our very best to answer those.
That's my job. I'm supposed to monitor that.
So let's see. The thing that makes me absolutely crazy is when people write
I'm going to do a scant 1/4 inch in that.
Right.
What is a scant 1/4 inch? I mean, I would like you to measure that for me.
Exactly.
What is a scant 1/4 inch?
Right.
I would like the actual
size
measurement for that, so I can get that pattern correct.
Right. So that your scant can be the same as my scant.
Yes, please.
And that's just.
Anybody out there know what that actually means?
Right. It's not. And we use.
That's not a unit of measurement.
It isn't. And it kind of makes quilters sound a little crazy, like if you talk to an engineer type person, because they would look at you and be like, what are you talking about? There is no such thing as a scant 1/4. There is a 1/4 of an inch, and then there's less than a 1/4 of an inch, whether it be a 16th or whatever. So, coming from like an engineer type family, and my husband is a woodworker and things like that.
When you go to measure,
right,
I'd like you to cut that on the
short
side of that.
The left side of the 1/4 inch?
The left side of the line. It's not quite to the 1/8, but
not quite to the 1/4 inch either.
That's still not a unit of measurement.
It isn't.
I mean, it makes sense in our head.
Right.
But that's still not a unit of measurement. So you can't put something like that in a pattern and actually expect everybody's pattern to come out.
Right.
Because there's no way for them to know what you meant.
Yes.
Does that actually mean the 1/8 shorter, or does that mean?
I think though the time that I lost my marbles over it is I got a pattern and it said something like cut generously and sew with a scant 1/4 inch, and I was like, that is like the dumbest thing I have ever read. You want me to overcut and then under sew?
That'll come out great.
Just give me a template at that
point. My points are going to be right on. Woo woo. Yeah, no, unfortunately that's just not a thing. So
it's not.
Why do people do that?
I believe they do that because maybe they know that an actual 1/4 of an inch seam isn't a measurement that is workable on all different sewing machines, because we aren't all using the same materials. And
are you going to show us how to fix that?
I am. I'm going to show you a way that it doesn't matter what materials you're using. If you do a little bit of I call it the test sew.
Yep.
So if you test sew ahead of time, then you will always be able to figure out where you need to put your needle position. And so stop thinking about it as a 1/4 of an inch.
I think I've told parts of this story before, but I took a quilting class. I was planning to learn from my grandma, and unfortunately that didn't happen. She passed away before she moved back up here. So that didn't work. So in memory and whatever, I'm like, I'm going to learn this anyways.
Yes.
So I signed up for a quilt class, and I went, and the first thing we did, the first class,
Mm-hmm.
it was figuring out the 1/4 inch stitch on your machine.
Yes.
That's what we did. So I respect that lady a lot, because knowing what I know now and knowing what I knew then,
Right.
I didn't realize what a big deal. Now, we didn't talk about cutting at all.
Right.
Should have had a class on that too. But that was, and it's very similar to what you're going to show. What we did in that class is very, very similar to what your technique is.
Yeah.
She shortened it a little bit, but same concept.
Yep.
She literally had us, I still have that piece of scrap.
Yes.
In the settings that machine needed written on there, because that's what she had us do. We literally wrote right on the fabric, and then it was put right in our sewing machine.
Right.
And I still have it all these years later for what stitch worked, the settings and so on and so forth. So it's definitely the first thing you should do is this test.
Yeah.
And it's not a new phenomena, but it's a lot of times, I think, a skipped step. And then people wonder why things don't work out.
Right.
So this is definitely.
Yeah. I mean, over the course of your quilt, it can change, you can be inches off by the time you get all of your little pieces together.
I like this.
Yeah. I guess if you were sewing a garment, you could make a size smaller if you cut generously and sew scantly. Crazy.
for sewing clothes?
Yeah.
But obviously quilting,
it's
doesn't
different,
work.
Right?
It's a different world.
Different.
It is absolutely a different thing, you know. So it's not as precise when you're sewing clothing. If you screw up somewhere, it's like, okay, or you're like, oh, I did overcut. I can make a bigger seam there and fix that, or I just need to take that in a little bit, and you can fix that and whatnot. You can't do that in quilting. It doesn't all work out.
Yeah, I think that's like I'm a quilter. And so when I look at a garment and it's wishy-washy kind of.
You're like, I don't get it. I don't like it.
I need, just tell me where to cut and how big my seam allowance is supposed to be.
In fairness, there is in patterns. It does say where to cut and how big to make that.
Right. But it doesn't fit right. Like, we don't.
But then you have to adjust it. Then you have to adjust it to fit you. So fair, so, very fair. Absolutely.
There's, and it's kind of the same thing. Like when people are like, I want to make a king size quilt. And you're like, okay, what size king size quilt? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you want it to fit on the top?
Do you want it to have
how
the overhang?
Thick is your mattress these days?
Right.
Is it like up 21 inches off the ground? That matters. So there's so many different variables that we have now that we didn't have many years ago. So Lisa and I are going to talk about some settings on the sewing machine, and then I'm going to show you a couple of different ways and a couple of different tools that you can use to help set yourself up for success over and over and over again, and stop worrying so much about the actual number, because if you do the math and I show you how to double check that your math is correct, then you won't have to worry about it. It will actually end up being the right size when you're finished. So what should we start by showing different things on the screen, or should we start by sewing?
Let's talk about programming first, because I mean, you got to start picking the stitch before you can sew the stitch. So let's start with that. And we're going to move this guy.
We've got some fancy camera work going on today.
And where did you hide the?
It should be right there.
I'm probably rolling over it. No.
Yep.
Hopefully I'm not rolling over it.
We probably want to be there, and that's on this side. I can do that. All right, so we're going to plug in another camera, and that should be that one. Oh, look at that. It worked. This feels like a win. All right.
So far, I haven't screwed up. Give me time. Give me time.
I'm going to loosen this up just a little, and then I will be able to like zoom in a little bit. Yeah. There we go. Sorry, guys.
There's some beautiful fabric back there.
All right. So let's talk about
we are sitting in front of a luminaire.
Right.
So that being said, this same stitch selection options and the basic stitch things are going to be the same all the way down to a 7x12 or 8x12 combo machine, or on the 11 an 11 1/4 inch machine is going to have the same selection options.
Right.
Once you go into an 8.3 inch throat machines, they're going to vary a little bit, but they still have
The same.
the same stitch options. You're just going to have a few more perks on the bigger machines, but the
Exactly.
same stitch options are available there as well.
So what you're going to find in a variety of different machines is, if you look closely at the screen, right now it happens to be on stitch number Q02. And then below that, you might not be able to see. Let me zoom in just a little bit. There is a P on there. And then that P is like a piecing stitch. So that's how Brother and Baby Lock sort of designate some of the special stitches. And we happen to be in the quilt menu, which on this particular machine, you slide up. There's a tab on the top that you can slide back and forth. And we are in the quilt menu. So my sewing machine at home, I have my machine set up so that it populates basically the quilt menu. You can have your machine
Wow,
start.
it does?
It does. Isn't
that surprises me so much.
So you can have your machine turn on in a variety of different ways. You can have it set up for the quilt menu, or you can have it set up for regular sewing. And we can absolutely show you how to do that in just a minute.
Yep.
So if you have a Brother or a Baby Lock sewing machine, even the smallest line of our regular sewing machines, they have some stitches on them that are designated with P's. And the P's are going to reference using a particular stitch, either in the center needle position or moving it to the right. Actually, this has a left option too. I'm not really sure why you would use the left option, but
left-handed, I don't know.
Yeah, center and right are the two most common versions. So the stitch one that I have selected right there, right above that very small words, you can see it says piecing stitch, and then in parentheses it has to the right. What it has done,
I can't see my finger, I was right off camera,
is it moves the needle position over to the right. So it's a little bit closer to the right side of my foot. Now, let me go back just a minute. So Brother and Baby Lock machines, most of them these days are 7mm wide machines.
Yep.
Which means the distance between the leftmost position and the rightmost position is 7mm, okay? So if you have anything that is higher than a 5.5mm machine, so your feed dogs are wider than that, when you use an actual 1/4 inch, so when you are in the center needle position, a 1/4 inch is going to fall just to the left of your right feed dog. All right. So let me say that again. From the center needle position. Okay. So that would be 2.
Let's go over there.
Okay.
And yep. Yeah, they're
a little tight. Okay, so we are talking about the distance between your feed dogs right now, okay? Our Brother and our Baby Lock machines are 7mm wide machines, which means that the distance that we have in here, right, is 7mm, and then there's a little bit extra because the feed dog is on the outside edge of that. So if I were to use a 1/4 inch, so if I were to place this fabric on the 1/4 inch mark here, if you look closely, I completely covered this feed dog. So the feed dog over here is completely covered by my fabric, which means this is the area that I'm going to be sewing. So it's hard to see the feed dog when I have the fabric in this position, but oh yeah, we might be able to do that. So if you look right here, this is the 1/4 inch mark on my plate, and this whole part of the feed dog is completely exposed, which means I have 0 fabric underneath that feed dog right there. So I'm only using one of the 2, which means my fabric is probably going to list and pull a little bit.
Yep.
So anybody who has a sewing machine that is wider than 5.5mm, so your stitch width is wider than 5.5mm, if you use a standard 1/4 inch foot with the needle in the center position, your fabric will fall short of the other feed dog.
Yep. So
All
you
right?
will only be using half.
So you will only be using half because that's just how it mathematically works out. It's not something that is exclusive to Brother or Baby Lock. It's Bernina and Janome and
all of them. Doesn't
Elna
matter.
and all of them. Juki, everything. If your feed dogs are wider than 5.5 millimeters and you are using a 1/4 inch and you are in the center needle position, you will always miss that second set of feed dogs. So what I'm going to be talking about today is how to move our needle position over and use a foot that is not an actual 1/4 inch foot. We're using our standard J foot, which is much larger, and we're going to be using the edge of the foot as our guide for our fabric placement. This is going to help us so that we have the feed dogs completely covered and we get a much more consistent pull. Exactly. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. We're not going to be using an actual 1/4 inch foot to do this, but we're going to be talking about how to set up your machine so that you can have the feed dogs pulling through your fabric. Okay. So we'll go back to the screen now.
There we go. Nobody gets sick here.
Nobody gets sick today.
We're trying. How am I doing?
That looks pretty good. I'm going to back out just a smidge.
Good?
Yep. All right. So we have selected the piecing stitch, which in this particular machine is Q02. If you have any other machine, like I said, you'll just need to, it's pretty simple. When you select the stitch, you'll see the needle position move to the right. If it doesn't move to the right when you have selected that stitch, then you didn't pick the right piecing stitch.
Right. Correct. What she said.
All right. So down below, we have some settings, and I apologize, it might be a little bit small down there for you to see that, but if you have an electronic machine like this, so a Luminaire, a Solaris, a Dream, a Destiny, a Stellaire, an Altair, all of those types of machines, when you are in the quilt menu and you use your left-right shift button, you will be able to adjust your stitch by a smaller increment. So typically when we change and we move our needle positions using our needle position or our width button, we use it, we move in like half or 1/4 millimeter increments, depending on your machine. When we are in the quilt menu on this particular stitch, when we adjust this, we are moving in 1/8 millimeter increments. So this went from plus 5.50 down, and then we went to plus 5.38. So we went and moved 1/8 of a millimeter.
So what does that mean in reality of actually stitching? That means that the two of us, for instance, sitting down in front of the same machine using the same stitch, we all stitch a little differently, you know, just by how we handle the fabric, how we sit in front of the machine.
Right.
Do I like to see the edge of my fabric poking out the side of the foot? Do I not like to see the edge of my fabric poking out the side of my foot? Do I want it tucked under more, less, whatever?
Right.
So depending upon your personal preference and how you are comfortable in front of the machine, you can minutely adjust the machine to literally give you that perfect 1/4 inch stitch.
Yes.
So in the quilting menu, you have a much more accurate placement of your needle position, or the ability to get a much more accurate placement because it moves in a smaller increment of measurement.
Yes, and that's a big deal.
It is a huge
deal. If we're talking about the elusive scantness.
Right. So
because yes, it allows us to make a smaller adjustment so that we can put that needle position where we need it to be based on how we're holding our fabrics and where we're looking at our fabrics.
Right. So, you know, if I want a little bit of fabric to poke out so that I know it's not buried under too far or whatever, and that's what makes me comfortable, I probably need to move my fabric over just, or not my fabric, I'm sorry, my needle over just a hair to make up the difference of that little bit of fabric.
Exactly.
Same concept. You got to balance out those two things.
We have to balance those out. Yes. All right. So hopefully that part makes a little bit of sense. And what the number ends up being is not important. The important part is that we are able to duplicate what we want to do. So we're going to just go back to, go back
to 5.5.
To the normal, whatever setting it is for this particular style stitch.
And is that 5.5 pretty standard?
Yeah.
I knew the answer. Sorry. So 5.5 is the quarter inch from, that's the quarter inch measurement. So universal quarter inch measurement from center.
Yes.
So, all right. That one. There you go.
All right. So I have the machine threaded. I've got purple thread in there with my white fabric, just because it'll make it a little bit easier for you guys to see my seam. And I'm going to sew.
You don't sew like that normally?
I don't know.
Do you want me to move this? Are we going to go back to here?
We probably don't have to.
But we can pop it back on easy if we needed to.
All right, so because I have my needle position moved over to the right, I am going to line my fabric up with the edge of this particular foot here. You could also line your fabric up with the edge of your feed dogs. So sometimes when we have snap-on feet, we have a little bit of play in the foot. And if your foot is listing to the left or listing to the right a little bit, it can vary your placement just a teeny tiny bit. So,
well, if I'm doing a lot of piecing, I like to use an actual seam guide. Do you?
Yes, I do.
Depends on what I'm doing.
Honestly, I don't. For me, with a seam guide, I tend to push my fabric into it, which automatically makes my seam larger.
Okay.
Yes. And I'm not really sure why, but there's like a part of me that's like, oh,
it wants to be pushed up against it.
Yeah, I need to be up. Otherwise I'm too far away from it. It's some sort of silly mental.
It's like your head looks at it and goes, it's not close enough.
I'm not close enough. Yeah, I have a hard time finding that. Now, if I'm working with something that is larger than a 1/4 inch seam, I almost always use that because my brain has a very hard time
not doing a 1/4 inch.
That's right. In my mind, that is like it might as well be 3 inches, even though it's only a 1/2 inch, because it feels huge.
Yeah.
And I keep wanting to make it smaller. So, that's just because of how often I sew with a 1/4 inch.
Your normal seam is a 1/4. So anytime it's not a 1/4, it seems off.
It's huge. Yes. So there are a couple of different seam guides that you can use. There is this one right here, which is magnetic, and it will fit onto the plate of your machine, and you want to set it back a little bit back here. You don't want it to be way up here.
It's not going to do you any good back there. It's too late.
No, yeah, you definitely want to try to look a little bit further up. Don't stare at your needle. That will definitely make you sew crooked. Find another point that's a little bit in front of the needle to look at.
So one of the things we get asked a lot about that, and I'm sure somebody out there is thinking it, is that magnet going to cause a problem to my machine?
No.
Because we certainly, I get asked that all the time.
Right.
So I just wanted to throw that out there. It is not a problem. We wouldn't sell them if it was a problem. So it is not going to screw up.
I'll stick a gigantic magnet on my machine.
Not that you guys can see that, but it is not going to change anything in your machine. So I just wanted to mention that because I'm sure somebody out there is thinking, oh, isn't that magnet going to mess something up? It is not. You're fine, absolutely fine to do that.
Yep. And then we also have this tape, and this is called diagonal seam tape, but you can also place this on the bed of your machine. Again, you would use like one of those guides along the edge of your foot. It gives you something to bring your eyes forward to look at. And then
in truth, by the time it gets to the needle, it's too late.
Yeah.
So you have to have everything lined up in front of the foot, because otherwise it's too late. You're already unsewing.
Yep. And then we happen to have run out of these. This one, I actually use this all the time.
That's the one I use.
I don't use it when I'm piecing, but I do use this a lot. I use it when I'm top stitching. I'm doing all kinds of like my handles for bags and things like that. So I use this a ton. It is universal for most of our brother and baby lock machines, and it sits, there's a little screw over here that it screws into, and then it moves left and right. So we'll get more of these in. These are about $25. So I use that a
totally
lot.
Worth it. I love
Totally
that one.
worth.
It's very,
Yes.
very easy. And it just screws into the plate right here.
Yes.
So we do have, I love this. Oops, wrong one. Sorry, we got a new one. Hang on.
All right. So Marge would like us to give the number settings again, and what's with the red feet. So we were waiting
for somebody to ask that. So thank you. You think we fed that question?
Right.
So first of all, the number settings, we are using quilting menu stitch number Q-02, and that is a pretty consistent 02 number across the board, whether we're on this machine or another one. So 0-02, excuse me, is the number, and our needle position, whether you're using the width or left right shift, depending upon your machine, is 5.5.
Yes. And so I have seen a whole bunch of people using these online, and I was like, I have got to get my hands on these because, first of all, who doesn't like a cool new foot, right? I'm totally a foot junkie. Anyways, these are called So Fine Ultra T feet. All right, and they're red. And these are they're non-stick. They're ultra performance presser feet, and they make this in a 1/4 inch. They make an all-purpose foot, which is like the J foot, and then we make the N foot, which is like decorative. So one of the things that I really like about this foot is actually how snug it is.
Yeah,
so
there's not as much play.
When I compare the two, so there's a significant amount of play in this foot when I have that on. So depending on where I'm sewing, like I said, that can push the fabric and or your needle a little bit. So that is my only complaint sometimes about the feet, is that I feel like they're just a tad bit sloppy. And this one
is less so.
There's no play whatsoever. It's not going anywhere.
And I don't know if you noticed, when she went to try to take that off, she had to actually pull it off.
I pulled a little bit.
It snaps much tighter. So
yep.
There's definitely a difference. So it comes as a 3-piece set.
It comes as a 3-piece set.
Really cool too.
And it's $50 for the 3-piece set. So $49.95.
Pretty good for 3 feet.
And they are Teflon. So if you're a bag maker or you use a variety of different things, it's super slick. But it hasn't been so slick that it's not been great.
It's not working for your average stuff too.
Yeah, I'm playing around with these. So we only got a couple of these in, but if anybody is interested, we can definitely get more of these. And I'm definitely really enjoying the foot. It's been it's kind of a fun thing. The other thing that's really nice is it is really easy to see the edge.
The difference between your foot and the fabric.
Right, because it has because it's so bright. It's super easy for me to see.
Well, in the non-metal, also there's no glare from your lights or anything like that too.
Exactly.
So we do have another question here. Oh gosh, it did it again. I'm so sorry. Right when I went to click, it pops in there, and I see, this is, I told you, not my department.
Yep.
So sorry.
How do you put the seam tape on your machine? So
you just cut off a section, but you would want to use a ruler.
Yeah.
Or another seam guide of some sort to measure and make sure that you were putting in the right place. So placing a straight edge ruler up against the measurement position so that you're getting that sticker in the correct spot.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then wherever it is that you're going to place your fabric, then that would be like the line that you would use for this. What this tape was originally designed for, of course, I don't always use things for the same purposes. This was designed so that you can cut a piece of it off, and when you have a square of fabric and you are trying to sew diagonally from one corner to the other, normally you have to draw that line. So this tape is designed so you literally put the tape across from diagonal to diagonal, and then it gives you the position to sew on, and then you can just pull it off. But I use that tape on the bed of my machine as a visual guide when I need something to
follow.
To follow.
Out
yeah,
farther.
and it's kind of like washi tape, so it doesn't leave a
really
significant
sticky residue
on.
Yeah.
No. They also make a variety of like I have some plastic ones that you can tape on the bed of your machine as well. The problem with the plastic one is that you have to like cut out the area where your feed dog is, and that's the key. If you lose the key, then it never like goes in the right spot again because it doesn't fit around all the area. So so this is one of those just nice things. And yes, you can sew on vinyl.
That's
with
the great part about
feet.
a nonstick foot. It's one of those things that
it
is
will
a really
absolutely
good advantage to
sew
those.
on there. So what I'm going to do is I am going to line the edge of my fabric up with the edge of this foot.
And what is your fabric?
My fabric, I just have 2 pieces of fabric. We're going to have 3 because we're going to sew 3 pieces together. This is my sewing test.
Yep.
And I cut my fabric pieces 2.5 inches by 6.5 inches. So all 3 of these pieces are cut the same size. So 2.5 by 6.5. When I'm done sewing my 3 pieces together, my fabric should be a square. It should measure an equal 6.5 by 6.5, and I should be able to measure the inside rectangle. It should equal a perfect 2-inch. If it doesn't equal 2 inches and it is bigger or smaller, then I need to move my needle position either further away or closer,
depending upon whether it was bigger or smaller.
And the reason that I recommend a sewing test, and I recommend you do a sewing test with the same type of material that you're going to use and the same thread that you're going to use, because different weights of thread and different types of fabric, they take up more space in our seam.
Right, when you press that open
When you press it, yes. And measure this depending on how you're going to press. Because if you are a person who presses their seam open, you will have less bulk in your seams, which is going to affect your seam allowance.
It's going to, absolutely.
That's right. So if you like to press your seams open, and I'm not here to be the seam open police, I'm just saying that that is definitely going to make it a difference, because you won't have the actual fabric taking up
this or
this
that
space.
versus that is going to make a difference.
It really does make a difference. And so I'm a big believer on picking away and not necessarily bouncing back and forth between the two.
In a project,
unless you're paying attention and you really know where to move your fabric when you're doing that. So that can be a little bit confusing for you if you're doing a complicated project. So like if I'm going to press a part open, I will do all of those parts first and then do the other parts, making that little bit of adjustment. So right now we have made 0 adjustment, and I don't know how this is going to turn out. It could be perfect and we might have to change it. And if it is perfect, then we'll move it so that you can see the difference.
We'll change it, make it wrong.
Yep. So I'm just going to sew here.
And I can attest how easy it is to see that fabric on the edge of that.
Right? That's really nice.
My angle, I'm like, wow, that is very specifically noticeable.
Yep. And then I'm just gonna grab the other fabric. I didn't even sew these in the correct way. I got wrong sides together, wrong. Yeah. So we're ignoring that part. You, of course, when you do your actual project, will pay attention to the direction of your fabrics.
Hopefully.
Right. All right, so now I've got the second one lined up.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So don't you want it the other way? Yeah?
Okay.
No?
Yeah, I'm not paying much attention to what I'm doing. So we're going to sew our fabrics together. That's making sure you're paying attention.
Yeah, I'm sleeping over here. You know, I don't have to do anything except push buttons, so.
All right.
I planned it that way. I needed a nap.
Oh, that did not. It did start stitching. It didn't start stitching at the beginning. All right, let's try that again.
Did you guys not get the design?
There we go.
The background music. Evidently today's banjo.
Banjo. All right.
You did that on purpose.
Okay, so now we have 2 seams, right? And
Dee would like to add a set of feet, please.
all right, to go with her design from this morning.
Design from this
Yep.
morning.
All right, can you move to this camera? Pretty,
Ding.
please. All right. Wow,
I lots of stuff over there.
Over here.
You might want to back that camera up a little bit.
I can do that. Okay. So I have my 2 pieces sewn together. All right. Now I would normally take this to my sewing, to my pressing station, and I would press that really well. So I'm just going to finger press this here, and I am being gentle with it. I certainly don't want to stretch it out of proportion.
I don't see a roller.
I was going to say, I don't.
Why. I was looking for a roller, but I don't see one. Not hidden over here either.
Okay.
Sorry.
So now I have this piece of material, and it's pressed-ish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my ruler on top of this. And what I'm looking is on the inside of this, I'm looking to see where it is. And now my seam allowance is too big. I'm going to zoom closer to this to hopefully get around the glare. So here's my ruler. And here is the inside of my seam. And then here is my seam, but it's a little bit too far. So I made my seam allowance just a scotch too big because it's not perfect on the inside. What I really want to see is I want to see this folded edge and this folded edge make a perfect 2-inch, okay? Because this started out as 2.5, and if I deduct 1/4 of an inch from here and 1/4 of an inch from here, this inside piece should measure 2 inches, and I am just a scotch outside of that. Now, part of it could be that I didn't do a really good job of pressing it, but it's likely that my seam allowance is just a teeny tiny bit too big. The other thing that I can do is I can double check the total measurement of my piece here. So it should measure 6.5. And you can see that it does not measure 6.5. So I'm about an actual 1/8 of an inch off at the side here. Is that, can we see that kind of?
I can see that, yes.
All right. There we go, maybe. So here, I am an 1/8 of an inch off. So what that means is I need to move my needle position to the right. So I need to move it over so that when I measure this, it actually measures correctly. So we're going to move the needle position to the right 1 click, and we're going to try it again. Yep.
Ding.
Ding. So we are now at 5.63. And honestly, this is where mine is set at home, so it's not that big of a surprise that that's what it needed to be here. That just happens to be, I think, the direction that
how you angle
or
whatever.
them in. Yep.
Because there is that weird angle. There is something that's...
Yes.
Yep, for sure.
So I wonder, I can't even tell what the right size of this fabric is.
I have a black light in my drawer. Would you like it?
All right, so we're going to try that again, and we're going to try to get more accurate here. So I also really miss my knee lift right now. Okay.
Would you like it?
No, it wouldn't work because it's up here.
Oh, yeah, it's way over there.
Yeah. Okay.
Move the machine towards you.
No, I'm just being a brat.
Yeah.
I think my buddy just implied that I'm a brat.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not being a brat.
Now I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to make sure that I am sewing these in the right direction.
That's the only thing I could think of that.
She can also sign into her Kimberbell account and find them herself if it's a Kimberbell design. I don't know if Tucker knows that. Okay. I don't even know if that's for sure what she's talking about. So here we go.
Tucker. Little Kimberbell design. Have her sign into her Kimberbell account.
So, she didn't
Alright.
have any software to open this or anything, but yes, she would download it and she would just drag it.
All right, so here we are again, and
If she tries to open it, and she
I gave you a roller.
you did, yes. I didn't want it to stretch the fabric, so I was
Gotcha.
just doing a gentle.
I mean, I got up for nothing.
No, I'm using it.
That's
I'm
kidding.
using it.
Now I'm being a brat. Switch forward just a bit. There you go.
All right, so now let's see where we're at. All right, so we're pretty good. I probably could press this better, and I think that
I think
might
the press
be
would make you right on the money.
where I am. But let's double check the overall measurement here. And
Slide to your right.
I'm still a little shy, so I probably could actually move my fabric over, or I really could press this better. In my mind, I was thinking the white fabric would be super easy for everyone to see because you can see my actual stitches. I really wasn't thinking as much about this part.
Can
So
you zoom out a little bit?
yeah, I'm just trying to, let me get that lined up.
There you go.
There we go. So here you can see that I've got my 1 inch and then my 2 inch. So that's pretty darn good. I'm pretty in the area where I need to be. So you could keep working on your 1/4 of an inch. If that wasn't perfect for you, you could move the
Bump up
needle
again
over just a little bit. You could adjust the position where you're putting your fabric, because that has a little bit to do with it. You know, are you staring at the inside corner of the feed dogs? That position definitely makes a difference. And then the part that I was talking about,
thank you, Leslie,
the seam taking up some of the space, there is like the fabric that we have here, right? It does take up some of the space. When I have my seams pressed open, I don't have that. So that does make a difference in the overall,
how it's going to work.
Yeah, how it's going to measure. So I'm not paying any attention to what this actually looks like. If we were to measure that, so it's pretty much a 1/4 of an inch from like the edge of the stitch over. So, you know, you've got that to look at, but I don't pay any attention to what that actual measurement is.
Because in reality,
it doesn't matter.
It's what's coming out on the front and how it's pressing open that really matters.
Right. That's what really makes a difference. And it might be a little bit easier for you to see. You can kind of see my purple thread, maybe.
Yeah.
A little bit on the inside. So that is what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get our seams to be right at our 2 inch mark. And we're trying to make sure that the overall size is the 6.5. So here is my 6.5 inch mark. And there we have our 6.5 inch. So right up at the top there, we're right in our 6.5. And that's the goal. The goal is that I'm 6.5 by 6.5. This side shouldn't have changed at all because that's the cut size.
That would have been interesting. Then that's a lesson for another day.
That's a lesson for another day. That is absolutely right. So now if my block was coming out completely too big, then I would need to back off a little bit. When I am sewing with flannel fabrics, the actual seam allowance ends up being just a little bit smaller because that flannel actually takes up a lot of space in my seam allowance.
Yeah.
And the reason that I measure the space in between is because the goal is that the block finishes out to be the size
it's
that I
intended,
need it to be.
the pattern says it needs to be.
That's right. If I'm working on a 6-inch block, I need the block to finish at 6 inches. It doesn't really matter what I used to get to it as long as I used
the finishing edges are where you're supposed to have them finished at.
That's right. So moving your needle position, adjusting the position where you place your fabric, finding the sweet spot for you, that will give you something that is completely repeatable. I don't sew with flannel fabrics very often. So for the most part, I set up my machine. I almost always use the exact same type of piecing thread in there. May it be a slightly different shade of the same type of thread.
But you can expect pretty consistent results because you're
Yes.
putting consistent items into the formula.
Exactly. I'm using the same type of thread. Whenever I change thread brands, even if it says it's still a 60 weight thread, or if it says it's a 90 weight thread, it doesn't matter.
Same ply, same weight.
Right. I
doesn't
always
mean it's
check
the same.
because there are no thread guidelines. So there's no thread police out there saying your 60 weight doesn't match your 60 weight, doesn't match your 60 weight. It's just whatever the thread manufacturer deems as 60 weight. So paying attention to the different manufacturers means that I am paying attention to where I put my fabric, where I move my needle position, and those types of things. So hopefully that makes some sense. What we're doing by creating the sewing test is we're creating something that we can duplicate. We can say, okay, I have sewn with this thread, I have sewn with this foot, I have sewn with this fabric, and this is now matching exactly where I want it to be. Once you have that, you can save those settings. Most of the
machines have the memory capability of,
Yep.
you don't have to remember or write it down. You can just push memory and.
Exactly. Now, if you change thread types frequently, you could put a little, you could have a thread book, you could have a little note that you say, oh, when I am going to use this particular type of thread, these are the settings that I'm going to use. But I promise you, finding a way to make this work with a thread and a certain type of fabric will make you more consistent whenever you change anything. Because what you will do is you will learn to be consistent.
Right.
Because now you have a place to be consistent. It's like, when you make a recipe, if the only thing that you ever do is you add a little bit of this and you add a little bit of that, it never comes out exactly the same over and over and over again because you change the unit of measurement that you're putting it in. If you do something like this, you will be able to duplicate what it is.
Absolutely.
And then it will not matter what pattern you are using, because I promise you, when we write the pattern, we are writing the pattern with math. Math says that we're deducting an equal amount from our seam allowance, which is typically 1/4 of an inch if you are a quilter.
Right. So if we say 2.5,
right,
the finished size will be 2.
Yes.
That's the math.
That's the math.
You've got to figure out your path to get there.
Right.
Which is what we're talking about here.
And then you don't have to be nervous about what this elusive scant is. How far to the left? How far to the right? This is a way that it doesn't matter. Stop measuring the actual seam. Measure the distance between two pieces that you have pressed and press them the way that
you're going to press the quilt.
Exactly. So don't do what I did. Don't take it over here and do a loosey-goosey press. Go to your actually iron board, press it, and make that. And the things that I did not do in this that I typically do, this is not starched. I normally starch the fabric.
Right.
Starching your fabric also gives you a much more crisp seam. So it will definitely...
It'll make it easier for measuring. It
does. And the fabric is less likely to stretch. It also kind of doesn't do that little shift as much at the corner and the end.
But your test should be the same as what you are going to be sewing in your project.
Yes.
So we're certainly going to be starching our quilt fabrics. So
Yep.
you should be starching your test product as
Exactly. And you know, don't pay attention to like what the actual seam looks like. So like if you looked at this seam, it's okay. It's not perfect. The thing that people don't necessarily realize is that depending on the grain of fabric will depend upon how my
how
seam
beautiful
looks.
it looks.
That's right.
What direction you're sewing on.
This is the straight grain, so there's zero stretch. So it kind of looks wobbly a little bit.
Right.
If I were on
The other direction.
with grain,
Yep.
yeah, from salvage to salvage, I would have a little bit of stretch in my fabric, and the threads will sort of nest into the fabrics just a little bit better, so your seam looks a little bit better. But the important part is that it holds together. It's not that it doesn't have to be and look beautiful. It just needs to hold together. So give yourself a little bit of grace if you're looking at your stitches and you're wondering.
Well, sure, because you're going to end up having to sew in both directions.
Yes.
I mean, there's no getting around that. That's
yeah, they're going to look a little bit better than others just because of the grain of the fabric. You know, your needle can play a big part in how that looks. So, you know, I actually think I have an embroidery needle in here, which isn't something that I would typically sew with.
No.
So you've got lots of different options there of things that you might be that might be a little bit different as you're working through this. So you definitely want to pay attention to those types of things. So
absolutely.
Do we have any questions? Can you go to this camera for just a sec? Yep.
I can. Look at that.
So I know some people, no matter how hard they try, they still struggle with a few things. Like they struggle with the beginning and the end. They get like ears or it's not consistent. So I know a lot of people that use a little bit of like this is a temporary glue, this is a fabric pen. Some people will put just a dab in the corner at the beginning and the end, or they'll put a dab of this where they have a seam that meets. It will sort of help hold everything. It disappears, so it doesn't have to, it doesn't need to stay permanent in there. So this is also very helpful. A sewing stiletto. So this is very helpful because, you know, when the fabric gets close to the edge, it's hard to have your hands there, but this kind of gives you an extra little finger.
And you can get that all the way up under the foot.
You can.
Without any, you know.
Yep, absolutely. And then like this little nesting of threads that happens. So there's nothing wrong with your machine. We had a really long tail thread, and when we start stitching, the thread sort of grabs the tail thread and it pulls it up. If you don't want that to happen, if you just put your finger on your tail threads before you start sewing, it just needs to be on there when like the needle goes into the bed of the machine as it goes in.
Then you can let go.
Then you can let go. What you're doing is you're just holding that top thread on the top. So it doesn't get pulled in and wrapped around the bottom. So that's all that does. Is it just has to grab that thread. It has to go someplace. So definitely use that if that bothers you.
Do you think that the sew line would hold on the brim of a straw hat to embroider?
I don't.
I would use a sticky stabilizer, I think.
Yeah.
Either that or just taping it down and
yeah, I would probably
hold it with your stiletto
and hold. But I don't think that it would. It's not sticky enough.
I don't think so either. Not to mention that it's a large item that's going to pull and whatnot as the machine's moving.
Right, right. Yeah, I definitely don't think it's sticky enough for that. I have pins here, so you know. I didn't use any pins, but some people use lots of pins. The finer your pin, the more helpful it will be in order to keep your fabric pieces aligned. The other thing that you can do is you can lessen your presser foot pressure on your machine. Lots of machines have that as an adjustment.
Absolutely.
And if you find that like your fabric pieces were even when you started, but when you got to the end, the top piece is shifted. So the bottom piece shifted down a little bit. So if I adjusted my presser foot pressure, that would happen a lot less.
Yep.
So you've also got that as an option. Of course, you could pin, and then that happens a lot less when you pin.
That, or even the stiletto.
The stiletto
just
helps.
To hold them. Yep. It's like when you let go, a lot of times you shift things too.
Yep.
So it's easy to, that is an easy thing to have happen.
Yes.
But there are many things you can do to prevent it, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are just some of the different things that you can use. And I only brought the pin cushion over here because I kind of knew somebody was going to ask about the magnet. These are also magnetic, and I honestly, it's going to sound completely crazy, but I have one on the side of the bed of my machine that just kind of hangs out there. And it doesn't affect, it's never affected my machine or anything. So don't worry about
the magnet's
that.
They're
an issue. Not strong enough to cause any issues whatsoever.
You think about all the magnetic hoops and all of the things that we have for sewing machines these days. It is definitely not the concerns that we once had, for sure.
Yeah.
Karen, I would probably recommend from that perspective doing a water soluble. You can even just put like a towel, like paper towel, on the back and just letting it kind of soak it out.
Yeah.
If you didn't want to douse it with what, but I can see where that would be a problem, just depending upon what you're doing. But
yeah, sticky wash away.
Sticky wash away would probably be the direction I would go for something like that.
And get the sticky off ASAP.
ASAP.
All right, so don't forget to like us and subscribe.
Like, subscribe.
Surprise.
Not sure where that one came from.
Yeah, this is really hard for us to remember to do these things.
Yeah, we're trying.
We are absolutely trying. And if anybody
Tucker's
has
laughing at us.
any questions,
sounds good.
And you purchased your machine from us and you want to know where that sweet spot is on your machine,
yeah, absolutely.
Definitely give us a call, or we can schedule a lesson and we can help you with that. Even if you didn't buy the machine from us, if you have a question about your brother or your baby lock and you want to know where that stitch is,
and you were watching us today, give us a
call. There's the phone number growing at the bottom, or give us an email, or I guess we made Carol mad. I'm sorry.
So sad.
But that is it.
That's what we've got.
Can you think of anything else?
I can't.
Who knew I could talk about that for an hour?
2 hands up. It always goes so fast. We think, okay, well, yeah, we'll have time to talk about that, or we'll have time to talk. We never do. It's whatever the single topic is. This morning we did let everybody know that the new metallic threads have arrived. So if you are a King Star metallic thread lover, we do have the 3 new colors available. I don't remember what their actual names are, but it's like a leafy green,
white, purple, and fuchsia.
Thank you. Fuchsia, leaf green, and light purple are their actual names.
And that is MA 25, 26, and 27.
So
how did you get?
Oh,
I did
absolutely.
Say, yes.
Let me, that's, where did I put it? Like looking on the floor. Let's put this here. See, we need you guys to remind us of these things. All right. Are you good?
I am.
All right. So here's our screen. We're going to go to wherever your settings is, which is the piece of paper with the turn down corner looking guy there. And then you're going to get a whole bunch of other stuff. And everybody's machines have different things on different pages. So outside of this machine, I can't tell you what page it will be on, but the setting is still the same.
It's on that page.
The initial stitch page is what we're looking for. And you have the option of your standard utility or your quilting. And so if you touch the Q, that will be your quilting menu. And when you go to sewing, or if you only, if you don't have your embroidery on and you're going, whatever, if you turn on the sewing menu from the home screen, it will automatically open on the quilting menu.
Yep.
It's that simple.
That simple.
So again, your settings menu, and then scroll to whichever page has initial stitch page and choose quilt.
Yep.
That's how it's done.
And that's how easy it is. Yep. You've got so much stuff in that settings menu. Definitely, if you've never gone through
take
that.
a gander.
Yeah. And look, we've done a couple of videos just on the settings menus. Definitely go through there and take a peek.
So many things that you can do. You know, some of it's silly. I was reading a post that somebody's husband, they had named their luminaire Luna. And somebody's husband had put in a update for them, and her husband renamed it Lunatic. I was like, oh my God. I replied, I said, I'm so sorry that you were having problems in it, but oh my God, that's hilarious. I was just like, your husband changed the name of your machine to Lunatic.
Yeah,
I thought that was fantastic. It's just like, that's good. This is why I don't let my husband touch my machine.
Every time I used to take my sewing machine in for service, my machine would come back with some new name on it. Yes.
Tony doesn't do that to us.
He doesn't. But it was always interesting.
Hopefully he's not listening.
I was always wondering.
Yeah,
I was like, I wonder what crazy name I'm gonna get this time. So, Karen, what is her question?
Reminder, will there be upcoming posts of classes from last week's virtual from you both? Last week's classes.
Oh, I wonder if she means the lunchtime learning from customer appreciation. We did say that we would talk about some of the stuff that we did
that we would try to do some videos of those. But it won't be videos of what we did. It would be repeating those. And there's no reason we can't do that.
No,
absolutely.
we absolutely can. Yeah,
we should write that down.
We should.
Might forget.
We will.
We do forget.
I'm going to write that down.
We'll write that down. Thanks for that reminder as well. See, this is why we keep you guys around.
That's right. All right. Well, I think that is all we have.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you guys. When's the next time we'll see everybody? Next week? We don't have anything.
We don't have anything this week.
I won't be here next week.
No.
So we'll figure something. Maybe we can. I can spock in if there's something. We'll figure that out. I will be at convention.
Yes. So there'll probably be.
We'll probably do something live.
Post some random
Monday
things.
Something or
next week about the new product. So there will be a new product email coming out. It will definitely have brother information in there. It may not have baby lock information in there.
Yeah, I don't think they're releasing on Monday.
Right.
So
but there is new baby lock stuff coming.
There is. Absolutely.
So if you're hoping for new baby lock stuff, just wait. Yes.
Or call and we'll talk to you about it individually.
As much as we know, which isn't a ton yet. But new brother information is released
just coming around the corner
on Sunday. So an email will come out Sunday night with the new stuff, and it's kind of cool. So a lot of you guys are going to be really happy. So we're happy about that.
Good stuff coming.
Next week will be different.
We'll keep you posted on what's going to be when, but just look for a notification like today's of when you can find us, because we don't know when we'll be where.
Right.
So we'll see you then whenever it is.
Yep.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Wrong one. Up.
I was there. It moved on me.